Howdy! Welcome to Dive In, a podcast series put on by the Psychology Department's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. My name is Grace Rivera, and I will be one of your hosts this evening. I am a second-year graduate student pursuing my PhD in Social and Personality Psychology here at Texas A&M. I joined the Diversity and Inclusion Committee because I'm interested in promoting a more inclusive environment for our students, particularly for those who feel like they don't fit in or like their voices aren't being heard.
Howdy! My name is Jessica Perez. I will be hosting with Grace this evening. I am a senior psychology major, and I joined this committee because I think it is important that people are aware of different cultures and learning about different perspectives.
In Dive In's first podcast, we will focus on understanding what the concepts diversity and inclusion really mean to people, and why promoting diversity and inclusion is important, both generally and more specifically in regards to Texas A&M.
To answer these questions, we conducted a series of short interviews with students, in addition to several longer interviews with faculty and student leaders. We will start by sharing the responses from students on campus to the following questions. What does diversity mean to you, and why is it important?
Diversity is important because the more people you come into contact with that are different, the more you can grow in your knowledge and social aspects of your life.
Diversity means just like different kinds of people coming from different backgrounds, and then I think it's important because when there's diversity, people can learn more about like different cultures or things that they're not used to, what they haven't grown up around, and so it just kind of helps you like have a better worldview and just learn more about the people around you.
I think diversity is important because it makes us more culturally tolerant. So like when we do meet new people, it's not like, oh, they're different than me, I have to shun them out, but it's more like, oh, this is your culture, I understand it, and it makes the world just a better place, I feel like.
I think diversity is important because it allows us to look at other people and realize that they live a life as vivid and complex as our own, which allows us to then love them that much more, because we can recognize the things that not only do we have separate, but we also have in common.
Diversity to me means people of all different backgrounds and experiences coming together and using those experiences to work together and create something better than just...
Diversity means having a wide range of different kinds of people, and that would include different races, different genders, different sexualities, and I think that, yeah, that's all, sorry. I believe diversity is important on this campus because it shows the wide range of people that exist on this planet, and if you only have a small sampling of a certain amount of people, then that doesn't give a good range of or a good representation of what the world is around us. And I think it's important to be able to have that be surrounded by every type of person, and especially in your college career.
So what is diversity? To me, it's different groups of people coming together with different opinions, different backgrounds, different ethnicities. And the reason I think it's so important is because if you look back, all the way from the beginning of the country, when the colonies first came together, it wasn't, one American people. It was all different groups of people from different religions and different, beliefs that came together for a common cause because they all believed in, making a better country and making a better way of life. And I think that still applies to today.
All right, so I think diversity is important because, of course, we live in a country here that has so many different, types of people and so many different types of cultures. So if we lack diversity, then individuals will not be able to see, everyone's points of views, and as well as it'll just be like a place where everyone will just kind of be secluded from not being together, and also, we would all have like these extreme points of views of not, coming together as one big whole and being, part of the United States or being an American in general. So, yeah.
Thank you. Now that we've heard from a number of student perspectives on the importance of diversity, we wanted to get perspectives from some members of faculty and administration, as well as several student leaders.
Our first interview is with Dr. Shrivi Ramasubramanian, the Associate Dean for Climate and Inclusion here at the College of Liberal Arts. David Tolstica, a senior psychology student and member of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, conducted the interview, and he asked some really great questions.
Let's see what our Associate Dean has to say about diversity and inclusion at Texas A&M.
Thank you again. So, what does diversity mean to you?
I think diversity to me means having people from different backgrounds and different genders, ethnicities, nationalities, abilities, and sexual orientations, political orientations, and religious orientation. So it includes different perspectives, diverse ideas, beliefs that help us get better and more excellent by being exposed to different views and ideas.
Well, in that kind of same line of questions, what does inclusion mean to you, especially among like university students and faculty?
Right. In the context of inclusion, we want to make sure that our work environments and learning environments are inclusive of all voices, that everybody feels comfortable to share their perspectives, and that also that we make sure that there is equity in terms of access, in terms of being able to get the best out of the student experience here in Aggie land, and that we provide a welcoming environment where everybody feels included and that they see themselves. So if you're a student, that you're able to see yourself as an part of the culture here, and that you see that you belong here and you are part of Aggie land, and that you are valued here and your perspectives are important for us. So that's what I think the inclusion part, especially those who feel minoritized and on campus, and in each campus that's going to be a different group, they should feel that they are included as well. So we need to make sure that different perspectives that might not be voiced, or different ideas we might not be including through our curriculum, through the student organizations we have, that there are spaces that allow for those to be expressed, and that they can be included in the culture of Aggie land.
Do you think that there are any specific groups on our campus that really struggle to feel included all of the time?
I think that given our history as a military campus and an all-male campus, and predominantly white institution that we are, and also we have been rated as not very friendly to LGBTQ individuals, and we often have even religious minority groups who feel maybe their voices are not often included, especially if there are hate literature and things like this passed out about their religion, or vandalism or things like that happens occasionally, and those signal to those groups that you don't belong here. So those would be microaggressions, different forms, whether it's verbal assaults, or whether it is physical, or it is vandalism, or all of these across the spectrum can make certain groups feel like they are not included. And also I would say that given the laws in Texas and the history of Texas A&M, even groups like those with disabilities, for instance, that's not getting much of discussion. Only more recently we are. So there's a lot of work to be done, basically, for all of these groups to feel included.
What do you think can be better done by students such as myself to help these other groups feel more included and to try to get their voices heard as well?
Right. So I think everybody has a set of privileges. At the same time, they might also be experiencing some level of oppression because people have multiple identities. So when I look at somebody, I might not know, for instance, they might have some mental disability I might not be aware of, or they might have some they might be LGBTQ people who not expressing themselves through a different type of gender expression be hard for us to know. So there are some visible minorities, some not visible. Often the visible minorities are subject to exclusion in many ways. So I think that one important thing is if we are a witness to somebody who's experiencing maybe they're told that maybe a racial slur is used, or in some way there's social avoidance. Maybe you're on a bus and nobody wants to sit next to an African American student, let's say. So, or you're in a group project situation, and one of the students' voices always gets excluded because of their identity. I think in those cases that it's very important to kind of stand up and say something. For instance, we have a bystander intervention program called Green Dot training that is specifically targeted at being able to intervene during sexual violence situations in particular. So what I would suggest is that we actually offer many types of trainings, whether it's Green Dot training that I talked to you about, or one can become an Aggie ally. The Aggie ally training is for being more supportive and providing a safe space for LGBTQ individuals to share their anything that they want to talk about and be an ally. So there are many such opportunities. We also now have an ability awareness program that we offer, training that we offer. So students can take these trainings and learn about ways in which they can be allies in effective ways and use their position of privilege whenever they have to actually include more people or share resources and make sure that any help that's needed is provided. And also I think there is something to be said about we have multiple student organizations. We are known to have several student organizations, and sometimes people say to me, why should we have student organizations that are devoted specifically to minority students, Latino students, or African American students, or LGBTQ students? Why can't there just be student organizations which are more general? And I think that we need to create safe spaces for those who are feeling vulnerable and on campus to be able to form their own networks and be able to share their experiences and draw support from one another. So those types of spaces are needed. At the same time, we need to have interaction across different groups as well, and both need to happen. So I would say that it's good to get out of your regular networks and usual people that you hang out with and try to attend some event, some workshop, some celebration. We have so many things going on campus all the time. I would get out of the comfort zone and go to these events, because then it shows you that the human side of every group. So as a communication professor who studies intergroup communication, I see that any intergroup contact is a communicative experience. So it's important to be able to listen to various perspectives and do so in a respectful manner.
So that was more the student side, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think that Texas A&M as a university can do? And I know President Young has been trying to really increase the level of diversity that our campus has. Whenever any sort of, because I know there have been a couple of different hate crimes throughout the past year, he's been very on top of his response to that. Do you think that the university is definitely moving in a positive direction in terms of the, I guess, diversity and inclusion that we do have?
Yes, I think that to have a university leader, like especially the president, committed to diversity and inclusion is really helpful in moving the university in the right direction, in my opinion. And he has also created student inclusion councils and staff inclusion councils, and all of these. When you look at the diversity plan that we have, which was established in 2010, it makes all the units, all the colleges, and also other units like athletics and so on, they are now accountable for better recruitment, better retention, better climate, and more equity for students, staff, faculty, groups. And including our college, we have Dean Matthews, who's very supportive of diversity efforts. And therefore, when the leadership is committed to these values, it becomes much more easy to go forth with initiatives, and also that they also provide resources for these initiatives. And also we have to report every year. We have to submit an annual report in terms of diversity initiatives. So that becomes a way of being more accountable, because we have to share with a public forum. The dean has to make a presentation to the Council on Diversity and Climate, which is a 25-member committee, and also in front of President Young and Provost Watson and the VP for Diversity, Christine Stanley. So the deans and vice provosts, they have to talk about their units and what strides they've made in terms of diversity and inclusion, climate, equity. So that becomes a way in which administrators are also held responsible for their own units and the ways in which they are moving forward.
You mentioned the 2010 kind of diversity plan, you said. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So one of the neat things at Texas A&M that Dr. Christine Stanley, the VP for Diversity, has established, which is not there at too many other universities, is that beyond just having a diversity mission statement and providing resources, what she's done is that created this council, and that has representatives from faculty, students, staff, and I think even the community. And the system is to basically have a annual reporting system, and each time you have to report to the VP's office. And now they've added that every other year there's also a formal presentation that the top administrators in each unit will make this presentation to the council in the presence of the president and provost and so on. So that is a way in which accountability, climate, equity, these conversations are always being had throughout the year. And part of our job now, I think many of the colleges have a position like mine, which is as Associate Dean for Diversity. They might have slightly different names, but having such a person in each unit also is an extremely good way of implementing the diversity plan, because there is somebody whose responsibility it is to oversee all of these programmatic initiatives at the college level. And we have had our Climate and Inclusion Committee at the college level with representatives, faculty, staff, and students for, I think, more than 10 years now.
What is your favorite way to promote the greater diversity and inclusion on Texas A&M's campus, in addition to just our community, our world, basically?
There are 2-3 things that I really like about the things that we have started. One is that we've had small grants that we give away called idea grants. And actually that's not something that I started, but my predecessor, Dr. Antonio Lapastina, he started giving away like $5,000 or $3,000. It's not a large amount, but it can really help to get started with the project or help to sustain a project that's already ongoing that relates to diversity and climate within the college. And we encourage collaborations across departments when possible, and through that initiative we've been able to fund this podcast series. We've been able to fund student conferences on diversity, or film series on diversity, women mentoring network sort of circles in some departments, and so on. So depending on each department or each unit's needs, then they can put in a particular proposal, and it's reviewed by our team, and then we support it. And I think that's a great way in which we support these programs. I would say is like we've now started coordinating a lot of trainings, Aggie Ally trainings, Green Dot trainings, ability awareness training, and also things like the Stride training for better recruitment and hiring of faculty members at the college level. And that has, of course, helped us now form a network of allies in our college. But also I think it offers a way to build better relationship between faculty and staff, faculty and students, students and staff, so on, who attend that workshop together. So new friendships are formed, and I'm happy to see that happen.
So how has diversity shaped your life, both as a person and as an educator? And
I actually some of my life experiences have greatly informed my role as a diversity educator and an administrator whose work relates to diversity and whose research also relates to diversity. So I think I find a lot of congruence between my research, teaching, service, administrative work, and personal life experiences. And I think that's great, because when that happens, your research informs your work as an administrator, and your work as an administrator informs your teaching, and so on. So that's been a wonderful exchange of ideas, people's contacts, knowledge systems. And I feel that there were many allies who have helped me personally in my life. So I've also served as mentor and ally for others in my life, and I see how that can make a difference. Sometimes it's just somebody listening to you without judgment, and sometimes it's just saying a few words of appreciation to say that you matter, your work matters, you are valuable, I care about you as a person, and your presence here matters. And so I try to go back to those positive experiences that helped affirm my presence through grad school and through being a professor here at Texas A&M. So I try to bring that those experiences back to the students in terms of micro affirmations that can help to affirm others' identities while also making sure that they feel belonged here. So I feel that my own experiences, I went to a men's college, even though I identify as a woman, because that was the only program that had communication and only college that had communication. So till then I was not aware of my gender identity so much, but it became very clear when we were 18 women and 2,000 men that yes, I had a gender, and it was very salient to me. Moving to United States and also experiencing 9/11, became very conscious about my being a brown immigrant woman who might be seen as non-Christian. So those experiences shaped my research and my teaching. So I teach classes on women, minorities in the media, for instance, and even when I teach courses on children media and adolescence or media psychology, I bring in my personal experiences into the classroom, and it helps people see how the two are seamless. My personal and professional are very much intertwined.
Next, we will hear from the president of the Psychology Club, Olivia King, who was interviewed by Jessica Walker, a graduate student pursuing her PhD in industrial organizational psychology.
What does diversity mean to you?
So I guess personally, diversity means like an inclusion of everyone and everything. So as a Cuban American, I kind of look to exemplify diversity, including everyone. I mean, with like politics and everything that's going on lately, a lot of diversity issues have like been brought up, and so I just look to exemplify that by just including everyone, not even just like with race or ethnicity, but like everything, even with psychology. When it comes to healthcare, like Alzheimer's, mental illness, because there's everything that affects psychology, and it's important to include everything.
Oh, very cool. I love that definition. And so, why is diversity and inclusion important? Or like, why is it important to you?
I mean, it's important because, I mean, if you're excluding someone, then you're taking away an opportunity for them to learn. And we're all here to learn, especially at Texas A&M. We're here to learn about how we can improve ourselves, how we can reach out to our community, and how we can make it a better place. And so diversity is really important to me, to include everyone, and more importantly, to not exclude anyone.
Awesome. And so, how do you think that the Psychology Club does in regards to diversity?
And in regards to diversity, I mean, I don't think we really enhance on like race and ethnicity, but when it comes to like psychology, I mean, some people are interested in counseling, and so they need to understand like the importance of diversity and how a range of just people with mental diagnoses such as like schizophrenia or PTSD or depression or Alzheimer's or all stuff like that. And so
there's such a wide variety
of
mental illnesses.
And so it's important to understand like how that affects people. And so I think with our Alzheimer's walk in October, that really helps people understand like the effect that Alzheimer's has. Because usually, I mean, people like usually do walks of like cancer, which is important, of course, because that alone affects people like caregivers and the actual victims of cancer. But I mean, Alzheimer's also does. And so like there's caregivers, there's related family, there's the victims themselves, and
you guys seem to sometimes highlight the less well-known like mental stuff. Because I know, like, at one meeting, you guys also talked about, like, eating disorders. Like, I think Nate, was it?
They were reaching out to us. Unfortunately, we didn't actually get to include them in our schedule.
But you guys, like, still talked about it, which I thought was really important.
Yes, we did.
Very awesome.
Yeah.
And so, how do you feel about the diversity of on campus?
Honestly, with like the area, it's kind of hard to. I mean, Southern Texas, it's kind of difficult to include diversity just with the political ideology of the area. But I mean, I think Texas A&M does a wonderful job, especially with President Young's recent kind of campaign with diversity. And so I think it's more open, it's more aware, and And so it's more aware to even us and to me that we need to include diversity in like almost everything we do, because it's important to students, especially to amendable minds that are coming into the campus for the first time.
Awesome. And so do you see diversity playing a big role in like your future career and everything?
I do. Personally, I want to be a school psychologist, so I want to eventually work with learning disabilities such as autism and other developmental disabilities, like maybe Down syndrome or even the simple ones like dyslexia. So I think like it's important to understand diversity because it's not just one race it affects everyone. And so we need to be open to understanding the races and ethnicities that come in, because I also hope to work with like a public school system, and especially that will come into play. And so
Definitely.
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry, I just thought of another question. But being a student leader, how does that affect your perceptions of diversity? Like how it makes you like focus on different diverse like aspects when you like run an organization, or just like in general like walking around campus like being a student leader?
I mean, I would say just interacting with people more often is eye-opening enough, because just people with different backgrounds just come to me and discuss their problems. Like we used to hold a lot of off-campus events, and some people don't have cars. And so, like, people come up to me and I understand, like, okay, people don't have cars. I have a car, I don't understand that, but we need to hold more on-campus events. And so, like, I mean, just in that, like, realizing some people's, like, advantages that they have, like, on campus, off campus, and stuff like that. And so, I mean, just interacting with people alone makes me aware of, like, how wide variety of members that we have and how wide of a variety students are on campus. And like there's grad students, there's undergrad students, there's just everything. So I think that helps a lot, just being able to interact with students alone as a student leader.
Very cool. Next, we will hear from Dominique Roberts, resident advisor and member of ARACE, a diversity organization on campus comprised of RAs who work to put on diversity events for residents. Dominique was also interviewed by our committee member, Jessica Walker. What does diversity and inclusion mean to you?
To me, diversity means it's more than just your ethnicity or your skin color. And I feel like a lot of people
Okay, we'll cut it.
Okay.
If you could just speak up a little bit. I'm sorry.
Okay, I was like, where was the mic?
It's like right here.
Should I get closer?
Yeah, you can if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, you're totally perfect.
There you go. Okay. So to me, diversity is more than just your ethnicity or your skin color. And I feel like a lot of times people like stop there when you think of diversity. And to me, it's everything, and it's a combination of the qualities that make us unique, like your religion, the language you speak, your beliefs, your hopes, your abilities, your SES, your sexual orientation, and your gender orientation.
So for people who don't know, what does SES stand for?
Oh, SES is your socioeconomic status.
Yeah, I always think that's a component that a lot of people like tend to forget about, or like any of those that you miss. Exactly, like it's more than just race and ethnicity.
And then for inclusion, I think it's making sure that everyone has an opportunity to be validated, so no one's left behind or forgotten, and they're all appreciated and celebrated.
Cool. So, you're part of ARACE. How do you feel that ARACE does in incorporating these your definitions of diversity and inclusion?
Well, so most of the time we have like meetings and we discuss like things that we see on campus or in the news, and it deals with the topics of diversity that I mentioned before. And then when we talk about our campus, we're like, what do we see here? Like, what do we want to do to help bring awareness to something, or to help like clarify a miscommunication or misinformation that other students might have?
So how do you think the diversity is on campus?
I mean, it's come a long way.
It definitely has.
Yeah, my father's father, my grandfather, he wanted to be an Aggie, but at the time when he was applying, A&M was not an institution that was, accepting black students. So obviously now it's changed. Like, I'm here, so I feel like it has come a long way, but there's still some changes we need to make to create a more, welcoming environment for everyone.
So how do you feel that ARACE is making it more of a welcoming environment for everyone?
I think a race is like bringing up the topic and bringing up the conversation, because a lot of people are afraid to start it, and how we operate. We want to have that conversation, and we want to make sure everyone can contribute to it.
Cool. So what exactly do you guys do in a race? Like, what's your favorite program?
My favorite program. I haven't been able to lead a program yet because I'm still like in training a little bit. But my favorite program that I've been a part of is Archie Bunker's Neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. I love that one. Okay.
And I don't know if I can like describe it really well, but it's kind of like you give groups of people like information and money to build a community, and then while they're building it, like you come around, you either like give them money or you take away money, or you like take away funding for schools, stuff like that, and then they have to build this community and then decipher like what group they're supposed to be representing.
Very cool. So what exactly is the training like? It sounds like the training tends to be pretty long term, just so that they can make sure that you're being very respectful of all the diversity issues. So how long is the training for?
Well, we had like a really like intensive training for like one day. I want to say it was like maybe 5-6 hours, where we like learned about ourselves, like our biases, our thoughts, our ideas. We learned like things that would trigger us in a conversation, or like if it came up, someone else, like how to handle those situations. And then now it's kind of like we follow more seasoned members, I guess, and then like watch how they interact with residents and how they put on their programs.
So how do you think the impact of a race, like what do you think of the impact of a race on students in the residence halls?
I feel like it's very beneficial, especially if the students are receptive to like learning about different people, learning from different perspectives. But if they're not receptive, it can really be like an uphill battle trying to present these new ideas or concepts that might be new to them.
No, that was a really good explanation. I think like the hardest thing is when they're not receptive, it's mostly because they don't fully understand. Yeah, and I think like that's one of the hardest things, is to get someone to understand the importance of diversity and inclusion. And so I think that Erase does a really good job of like making programs and making them into like a very like student oriented and like fun aspect, so that we like, even if they don't fully are aware of it, they become aware of it through like some fun activity. Yeah, that is so cool. So so you're in the residence halls.
Yes.
So we talked a little bit about what you thought about diversity on campus, but what about diversity in the residence halls?
My residents are pretty diverse. I have like a good mix of everybody and everything. I do have a lot of like sorority and fraternity people there, but I mean, almost everyone is in one here. But I mean, they're really diverse, and I see them like, they'll bring in friends, or they'll have like meetings in the lounge, and it'll just be like a group of different kinds of people. So I feel like they're pretty diverse in like their friend groups and their lifestyle choices.
Cool. And what do you think about how diversity would play in your future career, like, or even in your future?
Well, my future career, I want to be a teacher. And so a lot of the courses we take, it's focused on catering to students and including students, no matter, their cognitive level or their SES. That's a big factor that can contribute to a student's success in the classroom. So it's just finding ways to make sure that I validate each of my students and I know each of my students. So when I make lessons or I create something, I can include them all and make sure that they're getting all the information that they need to succeed.
Very nice. That was really great. Let me see if there's any other questions. So it's obviously going to play a factor in your future, and it plays a factor in everybody's life. But what are some other, so why is diversity important?
Diversity is important because we're not like cookie cutter people. Not everyone is the same. We're not all perfect, we don't all do the same things the same way. And so by making sure that we're promoting diversity, we are encouraging for more people to accept other people no matter how they come.
And so how has diversity shaped your life? I know we're going deep.
We're going deep. I've always had opportunities to interact with different kinds of people. when I was in high school and like now, I would tell my grandparents like, oh, I have a friend, she's Hindu and she speaks Punjabi, or I have a friend from Vietnam, who's Vietnamese, and I have like friends who are Korean and Mexican American and things like that, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, like, how does that work? And it's like, I just appreciate them and I accept them as they come. They play music and I'm like, oh, it's a good song, I like this song, what are they saying, like, tell me more. So I've always been interested in like learning about other people, and then in turn, like, sometimes you find out something about yourself.
Yeah, it's also, there's a lot of self-development too. Yeah, definitely. Well, that was great. Sorry, I was, so I think as my last question, what is your favorite way to promote diversity and inclusion?
My favorite way to promote diversity and inclusion?
Because we talked a little bit about programming, we talked a little bit about education, but what's your favorite way to get someone engaged and to learn about like diversity and inclusion, or like even just spreading awareness?
I feel like the best way is just to start that conversation. It's like, talk to them about something you're interested in or they're interested in, and see where you can go from there. See what connections or interests you share or don't share, and just build off of that.
Finally, we interviewed the Dean of University Libraries, David H. Carlson, to learn a little more about how our information resources play a role in promoting diversity. My co-host Jessica took the lead on this interview.
What does diversity mean to you, and what does inclusion mean to you?
So I think that diversity is having a representation of different backgrounds, ethnicities, perspectives, religions, sexual identities, all of the diversity that sort of makes up humankind, really, represented in some way within the organization. Inclusion, so diversity is, in some respects, a kind of superficial level of what it means, because you can easily tease out some numbers from that. You know, you got so many this, so many that, so many this, and so you can do measurements like that. But inclusion is, I think, sort of the deeper level of what diversity is. So inclusion is meaning that the organization doesn't have those numbers and those statistical measures, but it also has a deeper level of what I would say whereby diversity is a integral part of what the organization, who the organization is, how it operates, that those people are included in the organizational decisions and discussions and perspectives. I've heard, see if I get this quote right, I've heard a quote that I really like, I just hope I can remember it, that diversity is being invited to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance. And I think the nice thing about that is that inclusion, what it implies is that inclusion is really being part of the process, if you will. It's being part of the party or part of the dance, rather than just being, kind of sitting over in a corner representing a number, holding up a flag, a diversity flag. It really represents being an integral component in having a voice in what the organization, how it proceeds, how it makes decisions, all that sort of stuff.
Why is diversity and inclusion important for Texas A&M?
The main reason there is, and I mean this quite sincerely, I think the main interest for A&M is that diversity, if we do it well, we do it properly, correctly, I have every confidence that diversity is going to make us a stronger and better university if we do it well. So I think the interest, the most important, in some respects, the most important element of diversity for Texas A&M University is really self-interest, because I know it will make us a better place. It will make us a stronger place. There's lots of research out there that shows that organizations that are more diverse make better decisions, they incorporate input better, and they're better places to work. So I think that's my first answer, because I think it's better for the university, and thereby I think it's better for the libraries because we're a component of the university. My secondary answer to that is I believe it's it's the right thing to do. I think we have an ethical and moral obligation, professional obligation too, to ensure, as a public institution, to ensure that we're serving the population of the state well and properly. And to do that means you should be representative of that population in ways that the population as a whole and specifically groups can identify with. And if you're, I don't want to I don't even want to take a particular example and use it that way, but if you're exhibiting one particular kind of diversity and the rest of the state has some element or description that is completely different from that, and you don't represent it at all, as a public institution where you're supported with state funds and public dollars, I think you have an obligation to the best that you can represent that diversity because you're representing the state. So.
And what do you think students should do to promote diversity on campus? And why is it important for people to give the word out to students and promote diversity?
Why is it important for students to do?
Yeah, so what can students do to promote diversity on campus, and why is it important that they play a role in it and not just faculty?
Oh, I see. Well, I think there are a number of things. So, for example, I know that one goal of the curriculum is to broaden the horizons of students as an element of their education, and that's not just about intellectual knowledge, but it's also about cultural knowledge. So, I think one thing students can do, I know that the university has an emphasis, for example, on trying to increase the number of international exposures, international experiences of students. So I certainly think that's one thing students can do, is to participate where they can, find out information about the international opportunities that are available and that the university makes available. So that's one thing I think they can do. There are also an enormous number of different events on campus that students can go to representing other kinds of speakers. So I think my main advice to people in selecting those things would be to go to something that you think is going to make you a little bit uncomfortable, because I think that's the thing that you need to learn about, expose yourself to, and begin to get some comfort with what that is. So I mean, that's the one great thing about Texas A&M is because we are so large and because we're a comprehensive university, the number of activities that are going on around campus with opportunities to do that, I think, are diverse. And there's a wide number of things. So I think there's a rich opportunity for students to do that.
So what do the university libraries do to promote diversity?
We do a number of different things. The one thing that my default and knee-jerk reaction to that answer when I'm asked about it is I always, but it's only one answer, but it's the first one and I like it. And that is I always like the response that points back to what we do best. And what we do best is in our collections. So, and it's not just print collections, it's also electronic collections. So one of the things that we try and do is we look purposely for information resources that support diverse opinions. So we have a GLBTQ database, for example, that gives information about GLBTQ issues and things that you can search specifically on any topic, and you're likely to find GLBTQ kind of perspectives and issues. But that's just one example. So our libraries have been known historically and forever as being diverse places where places are defined as the volumes on the shelves. So we have diverse sort of intellectual content, everything from, very, very liberal in politics, for example, very liberal kinds of thinking and left kinds of thinking to very, very right kinds of thinking. And we have all sorts of representation of those ideas on our shelves. So I really like in the libraries areas where we can promote with students and faculty the diversity represented on our shelves to help them find alternative views on topics that they may be researching. So that's one answer. Another answer, though, incorporates the role of the library as a place on campus where students and faculty come. That's kind of that third place. You know, it's not the classroom and it's not the dorm. It's something a bit in the middle. And so it is interesting to me that even as libraries have gotten more and more and more into electronic resources that can be accessed from anywhere. You can access them in your dorm room, you can access them in your classroom, you can access them on your home, you can access them while traveling, just as long as you sign in and validate yourself, et cetera, and so forth. That despite that incredible mobility in where you can get the information provided by the libraries, we're finding that students are, we're overwhelmed with bodies. I think the number last year, we keep track, we have body counters, automatic body counters that simply track the number of people coming into and out of the building on a daily basis. And I think last year we went over 3 million people who came into and out of library buildings on campus collectively. So we're getting hit really hard, which is great. It's a little tough to take in terms of renovations and keeping the space upgraded. But nonetheless, it's really interesting to me that there is clearly the library is playing a role on campus as place. So one of the things we did to promote diversity this year is we developed something that's called the You, Me, All Welcome campaign. So I challenged our marketing and communications department to come up with a marketing campaign that we could use of materials that would simply say that the libraries is a place that would have the simple message that the library is a place where everyone is welcome. And so we have we're doing a variety of things. We've got these window clings all around the different windows of the libraries in different places. We've got posters that we're going to be putting up. We've got a campaign on social media that we're doing, and we've got big 30-foot banners hanging outside of Cushing with all of that messaging. So I think that's an important complement to I wrote an email to the library faculty and staff just the other day about this issue, and one of the important things that I said was that even though the libraries have that historically important intellectual diversity piece represented by our information resources, I think that, and that is still very important. I think there was also a very important role that we fulfill in terms of just making people feel welcome in a space and safe in a space, and that the diversity that they represent in who they are, not just in what they think, but in who they are as people and as humans, that they can find a place at the library where they are welcome as well.
What is your favorite way to promote diversity and inclusion?
I'd have to go back to my previous answer. The way that I like to do it most of all is when we find ways to promote the diversity within our strength, and that strength is clearly our information resources. So, for example, one of the tools that we use a lot, that gets a lot of usage by students, is a product that we call LibGuides. It enables us to easily incorporate and identify and say things about it's a way for us to kind of point people in the direction of useful information resources on different topics. And so one of the things we've been talking about is perhaps every LibGuide that we write, whether or not it's on capital punishment or how to build a better bridge or issues related to business or psychology or whatever it is, that perhaps we should have a tab for every single one of them that is a diversity tab, so that no matter what you're working on, that you'll have the ability to say, well, okay, so these are the standard sources, but if I wanted a diverse take on this and discover a different kind of thinking about it, what are the sources I could go to that would represent kind of a broader perspective? So anything we can do, so my answer to your question is whatever we can do that takes our historical strengths, lo these many eons as a library, and make that a component of what diversity means. That's my favorite way to promote diversity.
Do you have any personal experiences where you have learned from interacting with someone who you perceive to be different from you?
Oh, sure. Lots of them. Of course, it comes about a lot. I mean, as the dean of the library, I am charged with making a lot of different decisions and gathering a lot of input. So thankfully, we do have we could do better in this space, but we do have a pretty representative, diverse faculty and staff. So they're constantly coming to me with opinions or emails or statements or whatever the case, or memos, whatever the case is, and expressing opinion or just meeting discussions about the different perspectives that we have. So one of the things that we do in the libraries also to promote diversity is we at least a couple times a year, we sponsor some sort of forums or presentations. Sometimes it's just for the library's faculty and staff. Sometimes we open up to campus. So when we have those things, it's also a way for us to learn about the different perspectives that people have. Another thing that we did quite recently is we sponsored, I think we're now up to 60 people in the library, faculty and staff, employees, who have participated in a 40-hour mediation training session that the university sponsors and that we arranged and paid for. So through that perspective and in conversations with people, you learn a lot. You interact with them a lot in terms of how they see situations differently that me, from my perspective, see in a completely different light. So it's in those personal interactions with people that you get the most insight, I think.
Okay, and lastly, what is your message to past, future, and current Aggies and why they should care about diversity and inclusion?
It'll broaden their horizons. It'll make them, it'll enable them to operate better in society. It'll enable them to better relate to people who are not, who may not be Texans, who may have other cultural experiences, who may have accents, who may have a different religious background, who may have a different language, but who may be in the future down the road someone who is there, who may have the pod next to them in the office where they've got a new job, or it may be the neighbor who lives across the street in the house that they just bought when they start a career. I mean, it's all about becoming part of our social environment that is the United States of America, and part of that is we're a diverse place. We're all, at the end of the day, we're all immigrants around here. And my grandfather came over on the boat from Sweden and came through Ellis Island. So I'm a generation removed from that, but I'm still, it's not an unusual story. And they're very, very, well, all of us are ultimately, if you trace it back far enough, we all came over on a boat at some point. And so I think we all have to be receptive to that and tolerant of it, of the differences that we all represent.
Thank you to Dean Carlson for sharing your perspective with us. And with that, we conclude our podcast this evening. We would like to give a special thanks to our faculty advisors, Dr. Josh Hicks and Dr. Isaac Sabat, as well as all the contributors whose voices we heard on this podcast.
We'd also like to thank the College of Liberal Arts for funding this project with their idea grant, in addition to all the other graduate and undergraduate members of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, without whom this project would not have been possible.
And finally, thanks to all our listeners for tuning in. We'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and any suggestions you might have for future topics related to these issues that we can discuss on our podcast. Feel free to contact us at divein.tamu@gmail.com.
Thanks and gig 'em.